Hey, this is Matias from Secure Code Warrior. Thank you so much for having me. I would like to talk a little bit through knowledge and behavior. First question, have you ever eaten something that was unhealthy? I know we all know the answer, right? The answer is yes. Isn't that interesting? We know that something is unhealthy and still we're like, yeah, I've eaten it. It was fun, I liked it. So your behavior was different. So your knowledge is like, well, I know that I need to eat vegetables, but you know what? This McDonald's thing, it was super good, and I still did it. If it goes out of control and you need to go through a dietary program, well, guess what? They will not only work on the knowledge part, because quite often you know that vegetables are super healthy, but they will also work on the behavior part. Do you have sufficient time to go shopping? Do you have sufficient money? Do you have sufficient, because the healthy food costs more than unhealthy food? Do you have sufficient time to cook, and so on and so forth? So these dietary programs, they work on both sides. They work on the knowledge part, but they also work on the behavior side. Next question. Have you ever written code that you knew was insecure? We also all know the answer, right? Or not? Well, we do. I think quite often it's a yes. We've written code that we knew was insecure. Knowledge, we knew. We know that something was insecure. But the behavior part is, well, you know what? There was this deadline and the deadline was yesterday. So, we had to do it. We had to ship it. So in the next 5-10 minutes, I would like to take you a little bit through some data that we've gathered from an interview that we've done for 1,400 developers. So we interviewed 1,400 developers and we asked them, hey, you know what do you think about a particular subject? And the way I would like to do this is I would like to first answer the question myself, and then I would like to go through the data. Okay, so let's have a quick look at a couple of these questions here. So the first question that we've asked, what is your top priority when you're writing code? So what is your top priority as a developer or as a developer manager when writing code? Okay, so the way I would answer that question is, well, if I think about myself and I come straight out of university and I land my first job, I'm super excited. I'm still super excited. I want to solve real world problems and I want to create new features, new functionality, all that good stuff. Okay. Is that what our group of people answered? Well, it was a pretty diverse group of people, right? So not only developers that came straight out of uni that were still super excited and psyched about the new job that they landed, but a lot of developers that are in the trenches for years. And unfortunately, the number one and the number two over here are all about rework. Not the most exciting part, if you're asking me, but it's about rework. So the number one over here was about code quality and reducing technical depth. Okay, so a lot of developers, their number one priority on a day-to-day basis is about code quality and reducing technical depth, meaning rework, which means essentially from a productivity perspective, not the best thing to do in organizations, but it has to happen. It has to happen. And the number two was application performance. It has to be reactive. The stuff that we're making these days, it has to be super reactive, interactive, and responsive. It has to be super responsive. And we need to get feedback and we need to move on. All right, that was number one and number two. Luckily, number 3 and number 5 come close to the new work, to the fun and exciting part as a developer when you land a new job. The number 3 over here was, hey, I'm still there and I'm still solving real world problems. So 18% said, you know what, we're still solving real world problems. That is my top priority when writing code. Super exciting for those people. And number 5 was, hey, I'm doing new features and new functionality. So where those folks are still in the good part, where they say, you know what, I'm still super excited. I'm allowed to write new features, new functionality. That is my top priority on a day-to-day basis. So I skipped one, which is the number 4. What is the number 4? People said application security. Well, my top priority is application security. And that's like interesting to me. It makes sense, but also it doesn't make sense because what do you really mean with application security, and if that is a top priority? So on the one hand, I would say, yes, more organizations get it, and it's actually fantastic to see that developers on the ground are like, yeah, application, we need to make sure the apps that we develop are secure, so it's a top priority for them. But then at the same time, I'm wondering what they really mean with application security. Okay, so the number 4 was application security, 14%. But the next obvious question is, hey, what kind of activities do you associate with application security? All right, and if my answer over here, well, what I associate with application security, well, I had to think a little bit about this question, because first I thought about SaaS, because I have a long history with SaaS solutions and working on and with SaaS solutions. So that was, of course, the first thing that came to mind. But I gave myself a couple minutes and I thought like, hey, what is really secure coding? And to me, secure coding is the act of writing code. It's the act of writing code and using known secure coding patterns to actually produce the code. There's many more things that I can think of, activities like SAST and DAST and all that good stuff. But to me, that if I really think about the core of what secure coding is, it is the act of writing the code itself and using the known good stuff. Okay, so what does our survey say? Our survey says plenty of stuff, first of all. Our survey says, well, there's a lot of entries and a lot of people think very different about application security, just as what I've expected. So if we look at what comes close to my answer, the act of writing code, and by the way, there's no right or wrong here. It's just, how people think about applications, about secure coding. So if I look at what comes close to my answer, well, I think number 3 in our survey comes very close. Pre-approved pieces of code that are known to be secure. We're using pre-approved pieces of code. Really good thing. So you're in the moment, you're coding, and you're using pre-approved pieces of code. And the number 6 over here, which is really the activity itself, the activity of writing secure code. That comes closest to what I had in mind as an answer. But as you can see, there's plenty of other answers over here. Where the number 8 over here is like people said, I do not care. There's this group over there, they call themselves application security people. Well, probably they should be in charge of making sure my code is secure. And by the way, we also have this person over here, he's a security champion. Isn't he responsible for making sure that our group is, the code that we're producing is secure? So I do not care, not my problem. All right. There's still like 22% of the people over here that are not on board with the whole concept of everybody running around producing reliable code. By the way, I think secure code is just part of shipping reliable code. It's just part of quality. If you ship qualitative code, reliable code, well, that to me includes secure code. So these people are not on the journey yet. Then there's plenty of other answers over here, and I can actually collect them as after the fact things. Once the code is written, people need to validate the code, the typical SaaS solutions, the DAST solutions, the validation, the scrutinizing, all that good stuff. So a lot of developers associate secure code with the after fact, with the second portion, which is really making sure that the code is validated and is going into production correctly. Maybe one more. Of course, people thought about training as well. Luckily, people thought about training as well, and upskilling and making sure that they know the right answers and know the right pieces of code on how to produce secure code. So number 4 over here was the ongoing training and education part. Maybe the conclusion over here of this particular question to me is actually people do not really know what secure coding is or what the activities are. And it's by the way, there's no standard answer as well. I would say it depends on your code base, it depends on your culture, it depends on your organization. But maybe my suggestion over here would be for an organization to define what secure coding is. That would help a lot. That would help a lot, and that would help all the stakeholders involved to know exactly what is required from them and what they should deliver at the end of the day. All right, then I'll come back to the question I actually started with, and I would like to finish off with that particular question, which is the question, do you think that you leave vulnerabilities in your code? Okay, when I ask that question and when I ask for feedback, well, quite often it takes a long time before somebody answers that question. A lot of people are thinking, well, I know the answer, but how can I get out of the answer and actually give a different answer because it will not look good to me? But unfortunately, it is the truth. A lot of people have to say yes, we do write vulnerabilities in code. By the way, my answer over here, if you would ask me, like, hey, do you still write vulnerabilities? Do you still leave vulnerabilities in code when writing code? My answer would be yes, I think so. Why? Because I'm a little bit out of the loop of writing code in the last couple of years. I have not upskilled myself in the latest and greatest. So if I would be given a machine and if you ask me to produce code, I'm pretty confident I'll write insecure code, unfortunately. So the obvious consequence should be that I should not be given access to the code. You know, I should not be able to produce code. And maybe that's what they've done with Insecure Code Warrior. Maybe I no longer have access to the code, which should be a good thing. So our survey, what does our survey say? Well, our survey said 48% said blatantly yes. Yes, we still leave problems in code. Where 19% said, well, yes, we leave problems in code, but it depends on the project. By the way, still not a good answer, because if you look at history, there was a lot of code produced that was never intended to be used on, on the internet and be connected. Systems that were designed not with security in mind, because they were not supposed to be connected to the internet. And guess what? Now they are. Valves that control pipelines, for example, in the US. Well, you know what? Not designed to be connected to the internet. Well, now they are connected to the internet. So ultimately, what did our survey say? Our survey said that 67% of the developers knowingly ships code with insecurities. We double checked that with other research, and other research say similar things. We're actually on the defensive side over here, or we found other research where even a higher percentage of developers acknowledges that they leave vulnerabilities in code. Why? Why do we leave vulnerabilities in code? Well, in the last piece of our research, we asked developers, why do you leave vulnerabilities in code? I thought my number one would be deadline. I thought, people would actually say, you know what, there's this pressure. It's always yesterday. We had to deliver this by yesterday. So there was this deadline and I was super tired. It was 2 a.m. So I just shipped the code and I knew it was vulnerable, but I couldn't do it anymore. I had to ship it. The deadline. That actually came in as number 2. The number 1 was, hey, we still prioritize features over functionality in our organization. If we have to prioritize, and if there's this extra step for security and whatever, well, unfortunately, we chose functionality. We chose, it had to be done, and we had to crank these features out, and unfortunately, we didn't have time for security. Number 3 is unaware. People are just unaware. They lack the knowledge. They lack the knowledge on how to identify problems in code. Number 4 is the doom mongering. Everything is bad. This is an unfair game. We have to defend against everything, and the hacker only has to find one problem in code. Also not a good one. And the last one, the number 5, was unfamiliar. I knew it was bad, but I had no idea how to fix it. I have no idea how to do better. All right. So if you're interested in this survey, there's plenty of other good findings in the research that we've done. But ultimately, if you have knowledge and behavior, if you understand what the knowledge is that the developer has, and if you understand the environment the developer is working in, the behavior, what drives them, what motivates them, well, then ultimately you can influence them. You can influence that behavior for the good, for the better good. You can make sure that you create an environment where a developer can thrive, where a developer can say, hey, you know what? We've created an environment where you can actually learn, where you can upskill yourself. You're going to be more productive. And by the way, you've given time. You will be given an incentive to actually do that, because we as an organization, we understand from a long-term benefit, this will benefit all of us. So with that, I would like to leave you all, and thank you very much for tuning in.